The board is asking one question in 2026: are we safer or just r- better at reporting? Because the world is no longer judging leaders by policies, PDFs, audit blinders. They are judging leaders by proof. Proof that controls work, proof that risk is governed, and proof that business can scale without breaking trust. Across industries, we see the same pain. Compliance programs that are complete, yet incidents still are happening. Controls exist on paper but fail at the last mile when auditors ask for evidence. Excel is driven by GRC that becomes a real time system record and real source of risk. Tools are brought transformation but filling cabinets. Today we are having Prasad S. speaking, a practitioner, uh, depth across cyber risk, GRC, IOS led thinking, board facing clarity with clarity, the kind of voice that leaders shift from compliance threat to measurable. Let's welcome Prasad to the podcast event and dive into the topic. Hi Prasad, welcome to our
Hey,
podcast. How are you today?
hi Prem, thank you. I'm good. Good evening.
Good evening. Prasad, a small intro about yourself, your journey so far, Prasad, on to the
Yeah,
audience.
sure. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Prem, for this opportunity. So, my name is Prasadas. I work as an information security leader. I have close to 20 years of experience in InfoSec. And now, from last more than a decade and a half, I am into this GRC domain. Look, I have worked across multiple domains that consist of Big Fours, consulting, oil and gas industry, FMCG, etc. Yeah, I look forward to respond back to the questions in this podcast based on my experience, whatever learnings I had, and whatever I will be responding today will be all my personal views and whatever my understanding was up till now. Thank you.
Thank you, Prasad. The first question: why does compliance still fail even when policy and tools exist? What must the cybersecurity leaders change in 2026?
Yeah, that's a good question to start with. The basic problem is because of considering compliance as just a checklist. People think that we have the policy, we have the tools that are in place, but actually, in reality, that is only a starting point for an organization, right? And that is also because tools are missing, humans are in tools, and whatever we are writing in the policy, the interpretation for each individual will be different. Each team, what how they interpret, what they understand can be different. That may not be what the intent of that policy writing was. So, to the second part of the question, what I believe, what cyber security leaders must change in 2026. So, we need to have a shift of thinking from how to comply to want to be secure more. Because to comply, definitely on paper, we can show the compliances, but are we really secure is what it has to be achieved. For that, we need to foster a culture of learning, continuous improvement, etc. And not only compliance, not just compliance, that should be. So, compliance should not be a destination, right? It should be a strong culture that should be embedded into the humans.
Got it, Prasad. Now, when technology stacks grow, cyber threats also evolve, right? So, strategy gets board visibility, growth depends on trust. Where do you see the first break that causes the policy based compliance fail in real life?
Yeah. So, I believe the first break, it cannot happen in technology. See, that happens in translation, like I said.
Hmm.
You have a board, a policy, and a generic language that are in. But if you have to deliver it, then definitely people may tend to bypass it. That is how first break will happen. And if the cybersecurity comes without considering the business perspective, then they will tend to bypass it without providing a safe alternatives. So cybersecurity should go hand in hand with the business expectations. And then, if I would say that when someone has to be between a rule and getting work done, then cybersecurity there should be to help both to grow.
Now, when you say it's a culture and it's not a technology that is going to break at the pointer. So are we saying that these are the policies that has to be enforced so that it does not break? In other words, Prasad.
No, see, for example, we have a least privilege. In the policy, we say we have a least privilege, but the project deadline is tomorrow, for example. And what will happen? So then we will tend to bypass the process. So that is
Okay.
because that is where we are saying technology is not getting failed. It is what how it get translated and what the people understanding is. How you foster a culture about security, and what are the safe alternate that provides, even though we try to provide a secure organization, but at the same time how that goes hand in hand with the business.
Okay. Got it. Prasad, if I had to choose more policies, more tools, or more evidence discipline, what actually reduces risk and accelerate growth, and why?
Yeah, because policy will tell should happen, right? And tools will tell
Hmm.
what could happen, and evidence which shows that what is actually happening. So
Okay.
all the organization will have enough policy and plenty of tool, but what should happen, whether that controls are working in day to day life, that is very
Hmm.
important. And when we talk about, like I told previously about the least privilege, tool may show that access is configured,
Hmm.
but who accessed what, when and why, if that question comes on, that is when most of the time the team fails or the organization fail to provide that. So it would be, I think, in 2026, it would not be a policy or tools. With most policies or tools, that would be the ones that can prove actually the security. We should prove that we need to have a proper security foster culture in place. That will be the one who will be actually achieving it.
So in other words, what we are telling is the culture is one thing that is more important, and how do you manage the posture with that culture not going overridden by people for seeing the deadlines? That's the first point that I think what you are
Yeah.
saying, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes, right, yeah.
What is the difference between having a control and proving controls? What and why does uh, the board decide on trust?
Yeah, so having controls and proving controls, the difference, it is like belief and certainty, I would say. Because having controls, you have designed something, a policy, process, or tool. And proving controls means you have to show with evidence that it worked yesterday, working today, and it will be working tomorrow.
As many words, what we are saying is it's not that you have to say that there is a control, but you will have to also show that it is working and it is effective in the way that is get it's got implemented, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Prasad?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So in technology and cyber security terms, what minimum telemetry like logins and workflow proofs turn a control into evidence backed control that supports strategy and growth? Because every control that we are having should be looking at how we grow with strategy, right? So your take on it, Prasad.
Yeah, we need to have a minimum meaningful proof that shows that the intent, execution, and the outcome, right? And in the telemetry, for example, the proof that the control is alive, that is one thing. A signal which shows that the control is enabled, or the timestamp showing the last execution, or status, success, failure, or degraded. An example of telemetry, if I say. So what we need to have is minimum bar for security. Do we have controls? It will be, can we prove they operated, detected, and draw the right decision? And what whether the proof that security has turned as a growth enabler, mainly.
Now, what's the most common control illusion you see? Something leaders believe in working until the it is uh, an audit or an incident that proves it isn't working. So, your take on it, sir.
Yeah, so leaders genuinely believe, for example, if there is a policy, an IIM and an or an IIM tool or a dashboard that looks green, and those dashboard usually show configuration, but it doesn't show a behavior. So I would
Hmm.
like to take a three-layer proof. For example, we will have a design effectiveness or an operational effectiveness and the repeatability, right? And the design effectiveness, basically we can put across whatever we want, but what major thing is the operational effectiveness, whether it can be operated and whether the evidence that can be repeated. So that is important.
Got it, Prasad. So, what we are saying is there is a proof that it should be a design that is documented, an operational efficiency
Yes.
that is performed and shown, right, and repeatedly measured, mentioning how frameworks are shifting towards governance while measurable outcomes like are referred like your NIST CSF 2.0, which
Yeah.
strengthens your governance, right? So a control you cannot prove is just a belief is what we are saying, right? So that's the
Correct.
point that we want to look at. Now, why again this we have discussed earlier also in our question, because the first pointer that we see is we see Excel is quite becoming the biggest risk in modern GRC, right? And what should it replace without slowing down the business? Is there anything that you can think of about it, Prasad?
Yeah, so it was, yeah, if you talk about Excel, right, it was never designed to be a system of record, right? But yet we treat it
Hmm.
like one, especially in the GRC arena. That there are examples because there won't be no real audit trail, no live telemetry, no enforced accountability. And Excel doesn't fail security because it hides its failure until it is too late. That is what I would say. And we also, I don't think we should stop the Excel or we are trying to kill the Excel, but we have to move from spreadsheet to system that must prove continuously at business speed.
So what you are saying is Excel at the moment is one tool which can be, maybe it has version conflicts or some overrides which can spoil the data, is what we are saying is one pointer. And you can also have some code be placed inside Excel so that it becomes an attack surface by itself, right? So that's the point that we are talking about when we talk about Excel, is what I understand. Now, from technology and cybersecurity lens, what risks do spreadsheets create in access control, evidence integrity, and strategic decision making, especially growth, scale, teams, and vendors?
Yeah, because yeah, like you said, spreadsheets create risk because they sit at the intersection of access, evidence, and decision. Correct, but they were never designed to for the security or verify or governance of any of those, like we discussed earlier. And if you see for real world problems, former employees or vendor still have an edit access, for example, no strong linkage between identity, role, and approval, and there can be no traceable authorization. So all this can cause for this one, especially. And integrity risk, proof can be damaged, changed without a trace. That is another risk what I foresee in the Excel. Audit trail risk, decision risk, I can think of on that.
Okay. When you What's your simplest Excel exit plan for mid-sized organization that wants speed and defensible compliance?
Yeah, we should not remove Excel from the evidence basically. And what I think is, if Excel is deleted tomorrow, evidence should be kept somewhere. Evidence should be available somewhere.
Hmm.
Speed, like you said, from comes from automation. Trust from evidence. Excel should deliver neither, right? Because it cannot provide both. So we need to have a GRC tool or an automation tool which can have a smooth workflow, integration, and evidence that can be generated or provided, made available.
So what you're saying is, in spite, if tomorrow Excel is removed, also there should be somewhere you have the data to retrieve, and it should be safe. Is the first point that you are saying, and this it should also be linked to scalability, is what you are saying, and you will have to look at some of the SaaS Pro and supplier ecosystems. When you look at all those events, should be in one place and rather not in scattered way, but we see that in Excel sheets which are into multiple tabs. Now you should see that evidence is moved to a separate place, where I think that kind of evidence, if Excel is removed tomorrow also, you should be in a position to have the data. That's the point that you are driving to, right, Prasad?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And we are saying that we need to have a lightweight overflow, then the
Hmm.
evidence repository that should have, and control testing cadence, if that can be provided, and slowly that shall mature into an integrated GRC platform.
Got it. In 2026, what do auditors really look for, and what do they look across tech, cyberspace, growth, and strategy? What is that they look at?
I believe in 2026, auditors are not at all interested to look by the volumes. So they may not be caring about how many policies you have, how thick your reports are, or expensive your reports looks like. What basically they looks is whether the controls actually worked consistent over time, like we talked about it, the repeatability, whether we are able to provide the evidence that were provided previously, the similar one, because that is what we are showing, that we have a process of in place that is getting operated basis. So if we can provide the evidence as it is, then that is what looking for. Auditors are more interested.
Okay, so it is more of a proof that they are looking, and that's where they want to see how the control effectiveness is there, and how do you prove that effectiveness, right? That's the point that they are looking at. Now,
Yes.
when your tech stack is complex and the cyber threats are constant, what evidence patterns create intermediate audit confidence, and which beautiful documents get ignored?
Yeah. So I believe the auditors are not looking for any perfection. They are looking for the patterns that getting generated, right? Patterns that shows that controls are getting operated continuously, failures are noticed quickly, and decisions are owned repeatable. And when they see that confidence forms almost immediately, which means that consistency over time, like we said, the same control producing similar every month, then that is what they are looking for, and they should be good with it.
If leaders could just fix one, okay, habit before an audit to protect growth and broad credibility, what should it be?
The quick response would be stop accepting green without asking for a proof, just looking at the
Okay.
compliance dashboard. And
Mhm.
if they see that everything looks green, definitely there should be more drill down to it. they should able to go in detail and understand what exactly it looks like, right? Because there should be issues, there can be exceptions. There are certain cases we lack failure also. Yeah, it is not always has to be a green. So auditors should be able to judge how confident that we sound, how the teams are, they need to able to understand whether we are operating. So then that is the quick success, I feel.
Controls versus evidence, right? Where do teams actually fail or struggle, and how should the leader operationalize that into a system, so that they don't miss the gap? So when we started, we also we spoke about where we said is it is not the policy that is there, but people tend to override or see deadlines and pass, right? So how do you make this as a system, Prasad?
Yeah, I it teams don't struggle with controls, right? They struggle with operationalizing evidences and
Hmm.
proving their work continuously across people, tools, and times. That is where things breaks. Controls are designed once. See, like I said, design effectiveness, we can do that at once. But the problem is evidence is needed forever. We need to
Hmm.
have an operational effectiveness, and it has to be consistent over time. So the evidence leaving outside the controls, because evidence should be there, that has to be existing. That is only when there is an operation happening.
Okay. Now, how do we design technology workflows so that evidence is generated by default? Because we cannot go and create another evidence after we have the implementation design implemented. And cyber risk is reduced, strategy is measurable, and growth does not require heroic every quarter, because every quarter you will have to give that kind of a report saying that this is what we did it great, this and that. So how do you look at this piece, Prasad?
Yeah, the quick answer would be that evidence is generated by default by making proof a side effect of normal work and not a separate compliance task as such. And right operational thing, right? Like I said, evidence should automatically exist without screenshot reminders or heroics, like what you said. And they make evidence unavoidable, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, so I think evidence is default, risk is measurable, and growth is getting in the best possible way.
So what you are saying is people don't struggle how to run a control, right? So map that struggle points. When we see unclear things are there, evidence is scattered somewhere, and you have to see and bring that evidence back, right? So manual screenshots, what you said, is not required when you automate and you bring that uh, system. It's part of the system where a design is implemented so that the evidence also is collected, giving a simple operatable model is what you are saying, right? Now evidence is not scramble, it is a supply chain kind of an activity that you are talking about, right? So,
Yeah, not only that, and we do not need to have it as a separate compliance task for the sake of generating as an evidence. If there
okay.
is a process in place, continuous practice that is happening, then evidence is automatically getting generated. It is just that we need to put an extra effort to get that evidence in the form of screenshot to provide it as an evidence.
Now what metrics or signals in technology and cybersecurity prove operating effectiveness, support strategy reviews, and protect growth outcomes, sales, uptime, and even customer trust?
Yeah, for that, so can you repeat that question?
So, what metrics or signals in technology, cyberspace provide or prove operating efficiency, support strategy reviews, and protect growth outcomes like sales, uptime, and customer trust?
Yeah, so the metrics that prove controls are operating, decisions are timely, or stays proportional as the business grows is control health signal. For example, control coverage percentage, percentage of critical system that is getting continuously covered, and control drift detected versus drift fixed, basically. That can be one aspect. Decision and response signal, like we talk about mean time to detect, mean time to remediate, etc., right?
Hmm.
And scale and resilience signals, or we can also talk about metrics that directly protect growth outcomes, uptime and reliability. And
Hmm.
one more major thing is customer and regular trust, that can also be. And repeated audit findings, or unknown risk, this all can be a thing.
Got it, Prasad. Now, name one control you have seen pass audits but still fail in reality. What exposed it?
Major one would be about user access review that comes
Okay.
for everyone, right? And
Hmm.
though we talk about, and another one can be about patch management, SLA, because this all looks green in terms, but we tend to forget about what are the exception that is being taken for the patch SLA. For example, if everything is 100%, maybe that including the exception, and that exception has been overlooked, then that can be a problem. And user access review is the and or else we can talk about phishing resilience, vendor risk management. All this can be a good example.
Now, coming to the next point, name control applicability. What's truly in scope, right? And what is nice? And how do we prevent over control that kills speed?
So control applicability breaks down when organization confuse coverage with control.
Okay.
uh, Controls that protect business outcomes. For example, some controls are should be tied to crown jewel system, privilege access,
Hmm.
external trust boundaries, etc., right? Or else, if we apply and rigor everywhere, then that can be a problem. It has to be tied back to the business outcome, business, or like I said, crown jewel assets. What is the value of those assets? Then that has to be mapped to a control.
Okay. So what you're saying is you cannot tightly couple something to another piece and say this is a control. You should be looked at how effective that control is there, right? So that is what you're saying. Now coming to next point, how do you tie a technology asset and cyber threats to strategy and growth so you apply the right controls to the right risks without drowning in teams?
That can only be achieved if we stop the security conversation at systems and and restart it with the business outcome. That is when it can be, because classify asset with the business dependency. Like I said,
Hmm.
previous example, like crown jewels, what it would be: growth critical, operational, or a support. Map the threats against the actual strategy. That
Hmm.
will help.
Okay. Got it.
We can
Now, what
also
you're
talk
saying,
about controls or where risk meets impact, or
hmm,
produce evidence automatically. All this can be tied back to that controls.
yeah, okay. Now, how many controls do you really need, right? So, see, if you look at is there a measurable number that we can have so many controls, and how do we build autonomy of an audit-ready organization that can scale?
No, it is not about the number of controls, right? It is about how well process we documented, whether this has been tied back to the assets based on the business strategy, etc. That is when you are really succeeding it. And in 2026, I also believe that having, like we said earlier, having more policy or more number of control, that doesn't say that that is mature. It is about what strategy we adopt. Are we aligned with the business strategies? Are we really meeting the risk rigor, etc.? That is when we are succeeding.
Got it, Prasad. Now, if you had a design with minimal viable control set across technology, cybersecurity, what is non-negotiable?
So, non-negotiable are the ones that protect revenue systems,
Okay.
that constrain privilege power, or we say that capture decision and prove themselves continuously. Everything else can be optional, right? The minimum viable control set, I believe, would be privilege access, the first one, and definitely. And then we need to have change and configuration control, then telemetry and logging that we actually leave,
Okay.
incident exception response workflow that we need to
Mm-hmm.
think about it.
Okay.
Risk acceptance, decision governance, and yeah, we if we think louder, then more things will come, like vendor and external access control, and
Okay.
definitely executive leadership roll up. That is very important in
Mm.
today's world.
So you need to have a buy-in from the leadership also when we get those kind of commitments done. Uh, what does an audit-ready organization do weekly that struggling organizations only do annually? Because gone are those days when you had this yearly audits, right? Now it is continuous audit, continuous monitoring, continuous threat analysis, continuous
Yeah.
incident response, and all these things. So how do you look at an organization which is audit ready, which they do weekly?
So audit ready don't prepare for audits, right? Because it operates as if the audit is always
Okay.
happening and it is always watching. Audit ready review evidence weekly, and it is not like when the audit is approaching, or the monthly or a quarterly basis. It has to be a continuous process that should be in place for that organization, and they have to review the control signals, and not only the documents. The
Hmm.
loop on decisions. They has to validate the ownership, and they also need
Okay.
to look for the patterns, not perfection.
So your pointer is that they have to review, monitor, like continuously, and vendor oversight on a regular basis, because vendor also can bring some of the systems that are attached to our systems, which can be a challenge for us to run, right? So that is what we are saying. Now, why do audits fail, right, at the last mile, and how should leaders redesign the uh, operating rhythm to protect both trust, brand value, and revenue?
Yeah, so that audit fails in the last mile. It is not. It is because of the evidence, ownership, or decisions that drift away from the daily operations. That can be one of the basic thing that is happening, because they are getting drift, and it is not about technical failure, right? It is about the operational failure that is happening. Evidence is getting reconstructed instead of generated, for example, or ownership is assumed and it is not verified,
Hmm.
uh, and exceptions quietly overstay. So all this can hamper to add to this. That is what I. And
Okay.
everything looks fine on the paper or on the evidence until there is a follow-up question from the auditor. That is when there is a problem.
Okay. Got it. Now, in heavy tech environments, the last mile breakdowns, like you are talking about identity, then we are talking about vendor management, then we are talking about change management and logging, create cyber risk and strategic exposure that impacts growth.
Yeah, the last those that is like a last mile breakdown. That is don't happen because the controls are missing, or they happen because identity change or vendor access and logging drift. This all getting drifted faster than the leadership visibility. That can be one thing. And the identity drift, the silent growth killer, that I believe, that can be one thing. Roles change, but they don't trigger access changes. That is
Hmm.
an issue. Privilege access stays longer than needed, or vendor retain access after project end. This all can hamper to this,
Hmm.
or the
Now,
change management gaps. Yeah, that is the other thing. If there are any change management gaps, then there is a problem.
if you had to add one board level ritual that prevents last mail audit failure, what would be that point to be added, Prasad?
It should be a quarterly review. Sorry, evidence review. Not it should not be a compliance update.
Hmm.
That is the major thing. Like we said, that it should not be treated like us just as a other another compliance task, wherein it has to be a regular check, right? And
Hmm.
if the board can review every quarter, what are the three real control failures that is getting repeated, or are there evidence those controls are produced, or the leadership really made about what changed that as a result. And they need also not look at the volume, they need to see have the visibility about what is happening, and then have a strategic direction around it.
Okay. So you are saying it controls exist, but sometimes the approvals are missing. So that is one point. And evidence is incomplete, expectation, exception undocumented, right? So that those are few pointers. Ownership also for some of the tasks are unclear. So that is one pointer that you can look at. And offer fixes, evidence sprints, monthly control, healthy dashboards are few things. Executive review of exceptions, what you said, right? In I think DPDP rules are coming up, operationalized in India, the privacy regime. So it making evidence and accountability more board visible, right? So we cannot say that I did no or this one. Everybody has to look at evidence has an important role for the audit to be taken. One is that. The second is you need to follow the DPDP rule structure that is released in 2025, and it makes compliance at a very strict manner because the fines also are very high, right? Most
Yes,
audits fail in the final at only maybe 10%, right? So that's the point that I think what we can look at now. Can a AI really understand compliance, or it is just a hype, or it is reality? The first, and what should GRC teams automate first and never automate few of the things? So, what is your take on that, Prasad?
I don't think right AI can under AI does understand the compliance the way at least humans does, or we do.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
definitely it can have a behavioral or decision analytics. It can help us in faster decision making, etc. But definitely it misses the human intelligence, emotions, etc. So
Hmm.
that way it will help us to godspeed what we does in our daily life. And the GRC, it will help us to do the ways differently or faster the things, but it cannot replace the humans.
Okay.
And
Now, one
definitely it
last
cannot
question.
it can be an evidence, but it cannot do a decision work, right? They may be able to
Yeah.
help us in terms of
AI.
collecting the.
Now, what we have seen is AI is an enabler. That's what we. It can give
Yeah,
you suggestions, but the decisions are based on the approvals, right? So you give them an approval for certain criteria. It gives you that approval based on that set of instructions that you have given. If those match, I think that's the approval. But we have not gone to
yeah,
that stage of giving the approval to the AI system, is what I understand, right? How
yeah,
can
yeah.
we AI and automation strengthen technology workflows reduce cyber risk, improve strategic reporting, and accelerate growth without creating governance blind spots. Your take on it, Prasad.
Yeah, it can strengthen technology, like we said. If it is be used as a force multiplier for evidence or visibility, but not as a replacement for a judgment or an accountability. Definitely, it cannot be. For making or hiding decisions or etc. We cannot use rely on AI, but definitely it can help us in terms of the evidence gathering, the visibility, scalability perspective, reliability, etc. Definitely, we can rely on AI.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, because we
Prasad,
talked
one
about in the SaaS world as well, right? For example, collecting the logs from the cloud, from the IAM, SaaS, etc. So all these things, it will be helpful.
no, one last question which I have for today's session is: will AI replace auditors or empower them? And what should leaders do now to stay credible by 2026?
Yeah. So auditing is not only about finding data; it is about judgment. It also has an accountability. So automate
Mhm.
evidence, but don't automate accountability is what I would say. Uh, so definitely AI will not replace auditors, but the auditing, the way that is happening today, will definitely reshape it. It will have a more refined structure. It will be more challenging, but the audit also can be used in the right spirit of collecting the evidence, keeping it more visible. AI can be used, but it is not. I don't think that it can replace the or replace an auditor or a humans on that aspect.
Yeah. Now, I think with that, my pointers that I wanted to clarify with you are done. So, I would like to summarize on the pointers that we said. Compliance fails when it's policy led instead of evidence led. So, that is what we said. Uh, Excel is not just efficient; it's a control integrity of risk is what we said. Audit readiness is continuous operating system, not an annual event. That also we said because we run audits on a continuous basis. Instant response is automated. You look at threat handling, false positives are detected. So all that is continuous, not an annual event. So that's the third point that AI can upgrade GRC productivity only when governance is explicit. Automate
Yeah.
controls and correlate, not leadership decisions. Because we also spoke about that, right? It cannot take decisions. It can give you suggestions and give some of the pointers. So that's the pointers that I had taken note of while you were talking about Prasad. Any final pointers
Yeah.
that you have before we conclude the session, Prasad?
No, I'm good. Thanks for this opportunity. And like we said, we are looking for a definitely it is getting evolved on daily basis. We are all in the path of continuous learning. In the emergence of this AI, we don't know what is happening today is not going to happen today and tomorrow. Things are getting changed very fast. But definitely, as a human, we are not replaceable. We also just go with the flow, have a continuous learning, continuous improvements. So we will also go with the tide.
Thank you, Prasad. Thank you for being here. Thank you, audience, for joining us today. And I have one question which I have. I'll just bring it up and then we'll conclude. There is one question which he said, well said, Prasad is one thing. And there is another pointer that comes in. Thank you. Very insightful. These are the two pointers that we have got on the questions from the audience. Thank you, audience, for joining and sharing your questions. And with this, we would like to conclude our show for today, and we'll meet for a new topic next Tuesday again. Thank you, Prasad. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.